Okay. I earlier said I don't do political economy, but I forgot that I'm actually a certified political economist from the Political Economy Summer Institute. So on my wall, I have a certificate from Boston. Okay. So maybe because it was the pandemic, I went in a more theoretical direction with my contributions to this project. I guess I was sort of sitting around thinking about how can I make PowerPoint work for me instead of for itself, things like that. Okay, we'll stick with this one. This one's nice. Basically, my empirical research has been focused on 3 case studies throughout most of my career. The obscure Western Sahara issue, the Algerian Civil War, the 1990s, if you want to call it that, and then Libya more recently. And I began to think about ways in which I could constellate those conflicts with other conflicts, other things I had seen being shot at as a volunteer with the International Solidarity Movement in 2002, things like that. The draw here was to theories of hegemony and imperialism, partially because of the ways in which, can I have this one? Yes. So the sort of imperial anxieties about America's lost role in the world, which are always kind of funny if you want to approach it from a kind of ethnography of the elite sort of perspective. But also because more critical theories of imperialism that I was trying to engage with, to think about, like, do these offer some explanatory leverage of the kinds of things I was seeing, particularly those that focused on, as I got more interested in the Libya case, right, those that are focused on the role of oil in all of this. The concept note that I wrote was called Disciplining Hegemony, where I wanted to take a more post-structuralist approach to thinking about hegemony, not as, the way it's sort of theorized in a lot of the literature. It's either, etymology, like let's look at the Greek roots of this word or something, or you get really kind of bastardizations of Gramsci, where it's just like soft power or something like that. So I wanted to look at what I considered hegemonizing practices, or the disciplines of hegemony, and what make hegemony, as well as imperialism. The thing that I've noticed in the literature, and this is basically what got worked into a kind of literature review that I've submitted to the Journal of Labor and Society for a special issue on the Middle East, was a kind of systemic bias in the literature that seems to equate hegemony and imperialism, especially successful forms of imperialism, what we might call an order bias. The idea that order, stability, security, a kind of territorial leveling, and basically a kind of homogenizing force is what all of this stuff is about. And this includes a lot of the critical literature. I trace this back to the famous quote from the Grundrisse, where Marx writes, "Capital must strive to tear down every spatial barrier to intercourse, i.e. exchange, and conquer the whole earth for its markets." Right? Fast forward a few decades, you get Hart and Negri saying, "The world market requires a smooth space of uncoded and deterritorialized flows." Writing from a more Marxist perspective, the Patnaiks have written that the distinctive feature of financialized capitalism is that the world should not be partitioned, that no barrier should exist in the way of the free movement of capital, including the form of finance and of commodities. Right? So this is the bias, the order bias, the security bias, that sort of thing that I find very frequent in the literature. Here, I'll let you look at Bob again. Wait, this one's fun too. They recreated that moment. I can't even believe that. No, they recreated the event. They did a recreation with like descendants of Roosevelt and even Saud. So that's what it's. I think it's. Yeah, with tables from IKEA, I don't know if that's actually the Quincy or if the Quincy even still exists as a boat. But anyway, so what the challenge that I put to this literature, and where I think it actually connects up with a lot of the sort of empirical observations in a lot of our work, is to think about the fact that capitalism and imperialism, or let's say strategic state power, right, is as much a disordering force, is as much an instabilizing force, a desecuritizing or insecuritizing force. That is territorial contouring, not flattening. That it is I can't even ever say this, heterogenizing force in the world. So writing against this sort of systemic bias to think that, like, oh, the United States is a failed hegemonic power because it wasn't able to produce the outcomes it wanted in Iraq, to produce the stability. Antonio Arrighi basically suggests this in his two-part series in New Left Review, right? Hegemony Unraveling, only 2 years into the U.S. occupation, right? But that because things were going bad, therefore that's a signal of decline. Now getting into the sense of, like, you know, that there's an intent out there to create instability. I think there often is in some cases. If we, as one of the peer reviewers in my review pointed out, right, just look at Syria and the sort of way in which the United States wanted to keep the conflict going, just so that they could have a seat at the table in some way, right? Or classically, right, the prolongation of the Israel-Palestine conflict, of course, my case study, the Western Sahara conflict as well, right? So we have to be able to think about both of these kinds of things as happening in different cases at different times, right? Order in some places, disorder in others, stability in some places, instability in others, security for some, insecurity for others, right? So then it becomes an economic question, right, of a kind of scarce good, but of course the scarcity has to be produced, just like oil, and that sort of thing. So what does this have to do with financialization, right? The conclusion I've kind of come to is I really think, like, a lot of our theories, ours in the sense of, I guess, people who are interested in heterodox economics, critical security studies, we don't really have, I think, a good theory of empire or imperialism, right? If we take, I had some more cartoons, kind of cute. I like Kissinger over Barrel, though. If we take, for example, let's take one of the ones that we all know quite well, right? The Bichler-Knudsen thesis about differential rates of accumulation and the tie to periods of instability in the Middle East and profitability of the arms and oil sector, though they've kind of dropped the arms sector for some reason and focused on oil in recent years. So you have that thesis, very closely related. Byler and Morton have a thesis that similar in some ways, that U.S. wars in the Middle East can be related to the class interests of certain sectors of capital, right? Now, one of the reasons why I think this is these two, just to pick two examples, right, no longer work if they ever did. First of all, the war in Ukraine now shows that you don't need a war in the Middle East to produce high rates of profitability for the arms and oil sectors, right? It could be done in other parts of the world. Two, Adam Hania's recent article in Historical Materialism shows us that there are no sense in which we can easily disentangle financial capitalism with quote-unquote productive capitalism, because he looks at the ownership structure of the oil companies, right? So since the one of the other gifts of the Clinton administration after the abolition of Glass-Steagall, the Commodities Futures Modernization Act has allowed the entrance of interest-bearing capital to enter into this domain. And so Haniya, looking at the ownership structure of oil companies, shows pretty clearly that we can't clearly demarcate sectors of capitalism in the way that we used to. So, for example, Bitchler and Knightson say that there are certain sectors of global capitalism that prefer peace, that used to be tech and, I guess, basic commodities, your sort of Walmart kind of stuff, and that there are certain sectors of capitalism that, like war, the appropriation of these companies by interest-bearing financialized capitalism suggests that those interests are no longer as clearly demarcated as they used to be. So it is a kind of more complicated picture, I think. I'll leave it at that.